my name is Brooke Leong. I'm from Team 5. We did Judaism for a worship service project. We did a service online because there was no synagogues open near us at the time. My reflection questions are, the first one is, what did you expect to see or experience prior to attending the worship service? I didn't expect much, didn't know a whole lot about Judaism prior to this. I expected there would be possibly, they would speak a different language because I know that Judaism is a culture. I believe it's Hebrew that they speak. I believe that maybe there would be a lot of praying. Didn't really know what to expect. Second question is, did your experience match your expectations? Yes and no. I didn't expect much, so I was kind of surprised in a nice way. I thought that maybe they would speak in a different language, and they did. And I thought maybe they would do a lot of prayer, and they did, but in a different way. Most of their service was worship, like songs that were prayers the whole time, and that was all in different language. So my expectations were met, yes and no. So number 3, what stood out to you from the worship service? Something that stood out to me was in the middle of the service, there was a song that played, and it made the whole crowd spontaneously get up and start dancing. And they all started holding hands and went around the synagogue and circled around the synagogue and just went around and around and danced, and it was a really cool experience, just a cool thing to watch because it was really enlightening, and it definitely made me see why people celebrate Judaism or practice Judaism. Number 4, what was your main takeaway from this experience? My main takeaway from this experience would probably be that I just learned to respect just this culture and other cultures more, and the importance of them and importance of keeping that tradition and culture alive. I definitely learned that like more in depth about Judaism and why people celebrate it. So yeah, that's my...
Hi, my name is Tanya Lee, and I'm from Team 5, and our religion is Judaism. So I didn't really expect anything or know anything about Judaism except the fact that men wear kippas on their head. Also, I didn't expect anything going into the service as I really didn't know anything. Something that was unique to me and something that really stood out to me was that it was led in Hebrew, which reminded me a lot about my religion, Islam, because our seminars and youth groups and stuff like that is led by our native languages like Arabic, Urdu, Bengali, and just kind of so on. So it was really interesting to see how closely Judaism's worship service falls along Islam's as well. And something that I took out, or something that I took with me, was that Judaism is very alike to Islam and Christianity. I always grew up thinking that Judaism was super different from those two religions, and I didn't realize until now that it's actually very alike, especially our concepts about God and how God is not physical. God created the universe on his own. You know, how God is his own, like he's not a person. God did everything on his own. He's one person. He's the king. He's the ruler of the world, and so on. So it was very interesting to see the service. It was very interesting to see how it was led. Very peaceful religion. It was really interesting to see also how it is so alike to Christianity and Islam and other religions as well.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Darlena Jones. I'm a part of Group 5, and I watched the Jewish service. So what I expected to see in the Jewish service was just a call and response. That's it, period, point blank. And I was pleasantly surprised because my experience from watching the service was totally different. There was singing, there was prayer, there was communion, and there was teachings, and in the teachings the rabbi broke down everything, that as if everybody in the service, it was their first time coming. And for me, since I was a first time watcher of the service, I understood what was happening. What stood out to me was that both of the rabbis stayed in the front the whole time, which was explained by the fact that there was a teaching as well as singing and prayer throughout the service, and both of the rabbis participated, so it made more sense. Also, when the rabbis prayed over the children, there was a cloth, like a physical cloth, while they did pray over the children, which symbolized as protection over the kids. And it was very powerful to me because I enjoy actual physical symbols of, things in life. So to see that, it was very different from my service, because when we pray, we just pray. But to see that cloth of protection, it was very powerful. What my main takeaway from the service was that the singing and teaching and prayer, everything was throughout the service. So it wasn't boring to me. It wasn't okay, well, at the beginning we have the singing, all of the singing, and I didn't get lost with all of the singing. And then in the middle, we have the teaching, which I expected for it to be a long service of just teaching, but because it wasn't, I was able to go along with the service, and everything was just, it was a great service overall. I also see that the setup of the Jewish service is not much different from my Christian services that I attend. Yes, the beliefs are different, but the actual setup of how they get their message out there is not much different from me. So I pretty much was able to see that, okay, they're not much different from us in that aspect. Alrighty, and again, my name is Darlena Jones, and I'm a part of Group 5, and thank you for watching.
Hi, my name is Jalen Fuller, and I'm a part of Group 5, and for our religion, we did Judaism. So for the first question, it asks, what did you expect to see or experience prior to attending the worship service? And for me, I kind of expected it to be, because I do identify as a Christian, I did expect it to be some sort of service like how our typical church services are, with the, the pew, the preacher, the choir, and things like that. And number 2 asks, did your experience match with your expectations? And for me, my experience kind of surpassed my expectations, because although we weren't able to physically go into the synagogue, we were able to see it, with a video, and it was so much more than what I expected it to be, and so much different than my typical church service. So number 3 asks, what stood out for you from the worship service? And there were a bunch of things, but just to list a few, it stood out for me that they actually pray over the kids. Like, they cover the children and they pray over them. And then another thing that stood out for me was that instead of having a whole choir, they did have one person singing, and they would sing throughout the service, to where you wouldn't just, sometimes you get a little bored during church services or something like that, but they would sing so much to where it was it was fun being there. I love to hear the singing. So it was one person singing, and they would sing and teach in Hebrew. So that was interesting to me. And then number 4 asks, what was your main takeaway? And my main takeaway was just kind of that, it's not the same. Every religion has their different, different practices that they have, as far as Judaism with the synagogue and things like that. And it's just not the same. So you just have to do your research and, find out the differences and find, other things aside from what you're used to, which is what I was able to do. So thank you. That was my interview, and have a...
Hey, my name is Shazad Riaz. I'm in Group 5, and the religion we chose is Judaism. And due to COVID, we couldn't go to a place of worship, and take pictures around, so we just chose to watch a video of a Jewish sermon. And question one is, what did you expect to see or experience prior to attending the service? I expected to be, so I'm not really into, I don't know nothing about Jewish, but one thing I knew about them was they were a little bit bowing to some wall, I think like Israel. So I would have expected them to bow most of it, and that's about it. Did your experience match with their expectations? Some of it, most of the sermon was like more of a dance / lecture and more activities than it was bowing. There was some instances where they bowed to the walls, like different areas of the walls of the temple, and that was cool to see. Number 3, what stood out to you from the worship service? The thing that stood out for me was the involvement of the youth. There was a lot of kids there. So they did a lot of activities where the 3 main people who were doing the leading the sermon, they took their shawls off and they told the kids to come and go under, and I guess they did a prayer or some sort with the singing with it, and then they also did a lot of dancing while near the beginning, where kids and family just dance around while the band or people with the guitars were singing and chanting. Number 4, what was your main takeaway from this experience? My main takeaway was everything's united. It's a lot of activities, so you can say it's a fun sermon, and it's more like a Christian than Islam, because I'm a Muslim, so I'm used to just a Friday prayer, just go in, lecture, pray, and then leave. But this is more of a united, more activity. People had books out, reading, singing, and the scenery of the place was pretty nice. You had like crazy gold walls with design stuff. That was pretty cool to see, and that is.
Hey, my name is Pamela, and I guess we'll just jump into it. The first question is asked, what did you expect to see or experience prior to attending the worship service? Well, before I started watching the service, because of COVID, we weren't able to go to a physical service just because a lot of the synagogues have been closed. So prior to watching it, I kind of anticipated kind of being more like the service I'm used to, which is a Christian service. You have your worship in the beginning and then you have the service. And the layout was different. Like there was massive, like ginormous walls of like intricate detail. There were 3 people standing at the front of the pew rather than just the one pastor. And then throughout the service, I thought it was interesting that she would talk a little bit, mostly in Hebrew, and then would like, I guess, kind of mimic to, I don't know the right word, but to start worshiping. So the congregation would stand up and they would turn their backs to the rabbi, I guess, and look the other direction. So I thought that was interesting. I thought that was cool. And then they would turn around and sit back down. And then she would talk for about 5-10 more minutes. And then it was kind of like that throughout the whole service. And then did your experience match with what your expectations were? Not at all. I had no clue what to expect coming in to watch a Jewish service. Nothing like I am used to with a Christian service that I've grown up watching. And then what stood out to you from the worship service? Probably like just the back and forth service to worship. And then what I did think was really interesting was in the middle of it, I guess it was probably like more so the beginning, I guess, they brought all the kids up and prayed over them, and then they sent the kids to children's church. So I thought that was interesting. It wasn't just like a, hey, come in before you sit down at our service, go drop your kid off. It was, let's start as a family, pray over the children, and then send them to their service. And then after they brought all the kids back. So I thought that was really interesting. Yeah, that's my perspective on Jewish service that we watched.